And I promised you I would talk a little bit about the friction circle, because I noticed that there's a lot of mental horsepower here in this room, but how does it relate to feel? Now, the friction circle started out as a free body diagram. So what they do is they cut the tire and they analyze the forces acting on the tire. So what ends up with the convention is you have braking pointed down, accelerating pointed up, and you see the convention here. But the driver, when he's driving the car and he puts on the brakes, his helmet swings forward. So having this convention is counterintuitive. It's meaningless. And I'm actually on a little bit of a mission here, trying to get the OEMs that are starting to include G meters on the dashes to adopt what I call the fuzzy dice paradigm. Because as a driving instructor, I'm always trying to think of models to get these people to have a feel for what's happening out at the contact patch. So here we are. We've got these fuzzy dice hanging from the mirrors, and at steady speed, they point straight down. You squeeze on the brakes, they swing further forward until you lock them up. And then you go into the sliding coefficient of friction. If the maximum was a 10, you lose 30%, they come back. But since the tire can exert its force equally in all directions, we end up with what I call power circle. I wrote this in June 1991, and I have developed, because a contact patch people don't really have a feel for. The hairbrush and the balloon, you see that the bristles are not moving on my hand as I show the flex in the system. So we have a slip angle generated before the tire starts to slip on the ground. And now my students have a feel for what is happening where the rubber meets the road. Okay? And we all are familiar with the slip angle curve. And of course, this is a flattened curve, which would be representative of an older tire. And what's interesting to note is right here, you see that? And right there. Those are the same cornering force, but look at the difference right there. That could be the difference between standing on the podium and not standing on the podium. So what's happened is you turn the drivers, when they go into a corner, they turn the wheel, and because of pneumatic trail, they're trying to find the peak resistance. Okay, now if you've got a death grip on that steering wheel, you can't read that feedback with any resolution, right? So the other part of the curve is the load curve. Because if the view out the windshield shows that he's about to go off the track, he's got to put some weight on the tire, additional weight. So I've come up with what I call the Rubber Rudder model, and it goes like this. Watch carefully. If this is the hull of a boat, and this is a buoyant rudder, okay, and it's only partially in the water. And if I were to take some scissors and cut in 30%, so that now, once the rudder turns so much, it's obviously producing a cornering force, but at some point that flap is going to go this way. And that is representative of going into the sliding coefficient of friction. How do we do load? If this rudder here is buoyant, the more you push down on it, the more rudder is exposed. But since the coefficient of friction starts to go away when the pressure gets too high, the rubber rudder starts to flex. So now we have a way to visualize the feel of how the car goes through the corner.